From 1980 to 1985, I worked at the Gay Centre, and in the early 1980s, we began reading articles in the American gay press about this disease that was affecting particularly gay men. It was called at the time gay-related immune deficiency. It wasn't even called AIDS. And particularly in San Francisco, New York, there were large numbers of young gay men were getting this unknown disease and dying. So in about 1983, I wrote an article for Mancunian Gay about this new disease and began to start talking to some of the doctors at the regional isolation hospital at Montreal, which was then the place that was dealing with HIV and AIDS. And in 1984, organised a meeting above the Thompson's Arms in Manchester, and a guy called Tony Whitehead, who just got involved in the Terence Higgins Trust, had just set up in London, and a guy who was a key person in terms of HIV in the 1980s, called Tony Whitehead, came and spoke at the meeting in a very prophetic way about how AIDS was going to affect everybody. It was going to have a huge impact on all our lives. And we also had Dr. Bhattacharya, who's one of the doctors at the GUM clinic, talking as well, really. And I think looking back, it was incredibly important. We didn't realise how much HIV was going to impact certainly everyone in terms of the gay community. And then in early 1985, we started talking, a group of us who mainly worked on Gay Switchboard, decided to set up a telephone helpline called Manchester AIDS Line. And we had a small office in Portland Street. On a Monday evening between 7 and 9, we just answered the phones. And in the first period, we got mainly calls from the worried well, from people who were absolutely no risk of AIDS, but were really paranoid about catching it through shaking hands or sharing coffee cups. There was a lot of publicity in the press around HIV and AIDS. So those were the main calls that we got in the early days. And then slowly we got more people in Manchester who'd been diagnosed as HIV positive and were living with AIDS, and it began to expand quite quickly. We got more volunteers, we actually got paid staff, we began to do buddying, we began to do a lot of training and talks, so it slowly began to expand from the middle of the 1980s.